Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our show. I am really excited to continue my new trend of having a guest with me here on Social Skills Unscripted. And since we've been talking so much about executive functioning, I'm really excited to have Bobbi Westbrook here with us today because this is something that she's been helping and supporting for a while now in her job, and she's turning that into an online program for parents to help support their kiddos. And her program covers all sorts of different things that directly and indirectly tie into our kiddos' executive functioning skills, their cognitive skills, just their overall well-being. So I'm going to let Bobbi introduce herself a little bit more, and then we are going to talk about all the things that she knows and that she teaches that can help our kids be happier and healthier.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, first, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be on your podcast. I feel like really honored because I really hope that this helps people. I am a nurse practitioner, pediatric nurse practitioner specifically, and I work with parents of kids, younger kids, like kind of younger elementary to elementary school age in particular, and help them with a myriad of things as far as parenting skills and communication and behavior with kiddos, and general lifestyle management as far as nutrition and their general environment and ways to act proactively and intentionally move their bodies that actually helps executive function, in addition to unstructured play and things like that. So I have an online program that takes parents all the way through, and we hit pretty much every aspect of daily life with the intention of helping that carry over into everything they do, as far as being more motivated for schoolwork and being more motivated to help around the house without having to nag. And my real goal is parents are frequently so flustered and exhausted because they feel like they're yelling all the time and life is just chaotic and they just don't feel like they get a break. And they feel like the relationship with their child is suffering because they are yelling all the time, and nobody has kids to yell all the time. You know, we all love our kids so much. We want this like beautiful, right. We want this beautiful rainbows and butterflies relationship, and we want them to grow up and enjoy spending time with us and want to come back to us. So my goal is, the program is called Adore the Journey, because parenting is a journey. It's not something that we fix in a day because we all yell and lose our patience and things like that. But helping give our child an environment that helps their brain function the best, and then helping parents respond to their kids empathetically and understand how their brains are working just a little bit differently, will help everybody just cooperate more together in life and hopefully bring a lot more peace into the home. And then by the time those kids reach adolescence and teenage years, they have so many coping mechanisms and skills and tools that they can use to really thrive as they get more responsibility and they have more privileges like phones and things like that. So you're not, a story that I hear constantly with teenagers is, I'm constantly taking their phone away to try and get them to do their homework, and I'm constantly grounding them because they didn't do XYZ when I asked them to. And I'm like, man, if we can head that off when they're 5, 6, 7 years old and get your all's relationship established so that you can understand each other and be on the same page, you don't have to do any of that. And everything, they're able to kind of flow into young adulthood with a lot more confidence, and with the parent having a lot more confidence in them. So anyway, that's kind of a 30,000 foot overview of why I do what I do. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like my adolescence, constantly being grounded, having my phone taken away, everything that you were mentioning. Yeah, sounds a lot like my adolescence, and it was very chaotic. It was very detrimental to my mental health. It definitely damaged my relationship with my parents. So absolutely. And I do want to ask, if people are listening to this and they do have kids who are already adolescents, teenagers, is it still something that they can jump in and start using some of the strategies now?
Totally. Yes.
Okay. Never too
Yes.
late, right?
Oh my goodness, yes. So I
Okay.
would say maybe, there's a module on, setting boundaries and things like that. And with little kids, let's say, for example, you're setting the boundary of, I'm not going to let you jump on the couch, and they keep doing it. And so you just physically remove them from the couch. Okay, well, if you have a 15-year-old, that's probably not going to be the boundary you're setting. And you're also probably not going to physically remove them from places when they're 15. So, I mean, there's obviously some give and take there, but otherwise, yes. I mean, the way they communicate is not that different, teenagers and preschoolers.
Well, and I know
they're
one of
in
the
a
things we're going to touch on is nutrition. And
yes.
I just overhauled my nutrition 8 months ago.
Yes.
So just, I just want to make the point that while the ideal would be, to start kids off with the strategies that we're going to talk about,
It is
it's
never
never
too late.
too late. And even if you're like me and you're an adult, right?
Yes. Yes.
Definitely still things that can be done for that. So let's start with the first thing that your program covers. So I know you have several modules in your program, and I want to talk about every one of them. So what's the first thing that you cover in your program?
Okay. Well, the first is, and we'll get to what we were just talking about. We're going to talk about nutritional. The first is basically an overview for parents to understand how the ADHD brain works. Because I think that is, it's so easy to just look at a child and see they're hyper, they're impulsive, they're distractible. They must need more discipline, and they must need to try harder. And they don't understand that it's not yes, their behaviors are impacted, but it is not them intentionally giving you a hard time. It is them having a hard time because they have literal chemicals in their brain that are not working the way they're supposed to, or they simply don't have enough. And that is dopamine. And I think maybe some parents hear that word get thrown around sometimes, but in my clinical practice, we don't talk about why ADHD is the way it is enough, because parents get a questionnaire that them and a teacher fills out called the Vanderbilt score. At least in America, this is what we use. And it's basically just a survey that a parent fills out and a teacher fills out. And if they go together, it's ADHD, voila. And we never really talk about the chemical component of what's happening. So there's a neurotransmitter in your brain called dopamine. ADHD kids, this is a very overview. ADHD kids just don't have enough of it, or what they have is not being transmitted correctly to make an impact. And what dopamine does in the brain is it hits the reward center of your brain, the give me more center. And so that impacts a lot of the way that kiddos either get hyper focused on something that interests them, because if it's interesting to them, they get those little hits of dopamine, or they are not interested at all because they're not getting those dopamine hits. So that's why you get some addictive behaviors and impulsive behaviors, because they're constantly seeking those little hits. And something that I like to, one of the sayings that I like, when kids their minds can never rest, they have constant ideas that make them appear to be daydreaming all the time. And because as they daydream and they're like, oh, that's cool, dopamine. Oh, that's cool, dopamine. And so they hyperfixate on that. And they have a Ferrari brain, which is so cool, but it has tricycle brakes. So they have these brilliant ideas and thoughts, but then we are trying to get them to slow it down and get them to do what we want them to do. And so I think that it's really important for parents to understand why kiddos' ADHD brains work the way they do. It will help them be empathetic to them. I mean, you really, in order to respectfully parent them, you have to empathize. You don't have to be permissive, but you have to at least understand why they're doing the things they do. So that is, most of my program is very actionable. All of it is very actionable, as far as do A, B, and C, and you will see changes. There is that little bit of education component where it's you have to understand why you're doing the thing you're doing too. So yeah, that is, that's the overview of it, is not permissive parenting, but empathetic parenting and understanding their brain. And also remembering when you perceive they're giving you a hard time, they're not, but they are having a hard time with what's being expected of them by the rest of society. So anyways, there's that. And then we go
I love
over
all of that so much. I'm pinging on certain things that you're saying.
good.
I kind of live my life in a state of daydream. But it's because, those of us with ADHD, we have such vivid imaginations. And so
Yes.
our state of daydream is super cool, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because we're so creative and imaginative. And it's one of my favorite characteristics is the things that we can create inside our brains. It's also why we tend to be more prone to anxiety, because
Yes.
we are creating scenarios in our brains. And so sometimes instead of those being exciting and fun things, they're scary and worrisome things. So just
That
that's
makes
why
sense.
we tend to be more prone to anxiety, because we're
And
so creative.
yes. And I think a lot of that is also where girls fall through the cracks too. Like there's all sorts of studies and people trying to understand, why do girls not get diagnosed as much? Why do girls not get diagnosed as much? And no one really has a solid answer yet, but I think that's a lot to it.
It's not as
Is
obvious.
girls are tend to be the daydreamers who just can't, they're not being disruptive in class, but the teacher can tell they are like totally checked out or they're chatty, or they're doodly and things like that. And it's really hard to manage that because it's not so behavioral, it's not so outward. So even meds and stuff like that, a lot of kids truly need them, but some of them it's like you're just kind of tamping down that creative aspect, which is really sad. It's like, if we can embrace that their brains are amazing, Ferrari sports car brains, that everybody wants one, but just can't quite stop, and respect them and admire them for what they can do and encourage them to follow those daydreams and passions when they're not anxiety riddled. Man, wouldn't that be a fun place to live?
Yeah. And even, what you were saying about dopamine and addictive personalities, right? We're much more prone to suffer from addictions. And in my life, I have not ever had addictions to things that are, drugs, alcohol, things like that. But I was a hoarder for most of my life. And so I was addicted to having things. And I wouldn't say I had a shopping addiction, but just having things and not being able to let them go. And I would have, and I would have collections throughout my life. I've had different collections of things. And so it's finding something else that goes in my collection, right? It's so exciting.
Yes.
And I just in the last few years have really let go of that. And I feel you could walk in my front door now at my house and you would have no idea that for almost my entire life, I was a hoarder. Whereas 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would have been very obvious. But now if you were to walk in my front door, I mean, please don't, because like I'm an introvert, but you would have no idea. And it's so liberating for me now to I'll get home today and I'm like, man, like I love I love my house, and it's a new feeling for me. But things like, social media is designed to hold our attention.
Oh,
and
yes.
so
I
then
have a whole module on that too.
I mean,
A whole module on clutter, actually.
I mean, there are other
environment
things that
and on
you can
screens.
be addicted to besides the things that are typically thrown out in our culture. You can be addicted. I mean, I have kids in my program that are addicted to their phone. And it's a legitimate thing, right? It's not that it's legitimate. They hear the sound and it's a compulsive behavior, right? To just pick that phone up and look at it.
It is designed to give you dopamine hits. And if you're a kid that craves it because your brain doesn't make enough of it on its own, it is almost impossible to put it down and to expect them to have that self-control as well. So it's really hard when they get older, especially to set those boundaries in place because you're fighting with someone who has an active addiction.
Yeah. And I know we're going to talk about nutrition, being addicted to eating shitty food, because it
Yes.
has the same reaction, right? So I just, there's so many things that you said just in that introduction. I just wanted to share my personal experiences with, because it is, it's not that I want to be on social media for 3 hours. It's not that I want to have all this stuff in my, it actually doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good to
Right.
live in my house that was overrun with stuff. It doesn't feel good for 4 hours to go by and I'm still on my phone.
Yes.
So that's one thing I really want to make clear, is that these things that we get sucked into, we don't do it because we really want to and it feels good. It's like it feels good for 10 minutes and then we just can't stop.
Yep. And then you feel bad about it afterward. Yep.
Right. Kids
So,
playing
and
video games for 6 hours, it
yes.
feels good at the beginning and then we just can't stop. I
Yep.
even do that my I don't play video games. I'm not big on social media. I do Sudoku on my iPad, but
Yeah.
I even find that I sometimes, it's like the slot machine at Vegas. Like I find that
Yes.
sometimes I get way too sucked into that and I have to set a timer. And when the timer goes off, like I'm done playing this game.
Yes.
Um,
Timers. I love
yeah.
timers.
So, okay, I'll be
Oh no,
quiet now.
that's
Otherwise we will
what's
never finish.
what's awesome is you basically hit like most of my program all there. Like every single one of those things. I'm like, I have a module for that. I have a module for that. I have a module for that.
Oh, I'm so
So
glad.
like basically, which is encouraging to me that I am also that the program I've created is hitting important points in people's lives. So
Yeah.
so I'll just do like a very 30,000 foot overview on kind of the aspects in it. So yes, we talk about nutrition a lot. And it's not an earth-shattering change that needs to be made for a lot of people. So in our Western diets in the US, Canada, Europe, all those places, actually practically everywhere now, unless you live in like the rainforest, we are so processed. And I know people hear all the time, processed food is bad for you. Yes, we know that now, right? But what we're beyond just processed food being bad for you, whatever, there are just key nutritional elements that we are just missing. So like if you want your Cheez-Its, eat your Cheez-Its. But because with kids, with little kids, younger kids, adolescents, like they're going to find a way to get the Cheez-Its. But you can add and incorporate the things that they need that are missing so easily. So what happens is that you spend 90% of your daily caloric intake taking in empty foods, then your 10%, a parent is like, here, have some chicken, and I hope that's enough protein for the day. Or here at dinner, I'm just going to give you a few green beans and hope that's enough. And you're so full of nothing that your body needs so much more dense nutrition. So a couple things that in particular ADHD kids need that do not get in typical Western diet. One is omega-3 fatty acids. Our brain is primarily made of fat, and fat needs fat. It's like a lubricant. And omega-3s are things that are found, it's found in fish. I think everyone probably knows that, but also a lot of parents are like, oh, my kid won't touch fish. There's no way. Because sometimes
Not a big fan of it.
oh yeah, like a lot of times you also get picky eaters with ADHD or with any neurodivergence. Yeah. So like fish is going to be a hard one. They do make some supplements where they make them in gummies. I know a company that I have used before, and I'm like not at all affiliated with anything, but Nordic Naturals makes gummies that are like, depending on how picky your kid is, mine loved the gummies, but when I tasted one, I was like, okay, that's a little bit fish oily. But my kid loved it. Like she did not care because it was flavored. So you can do gummies, you can do an oil, or
I've done
you can,
capsules.
yeah,
'Cause then
capsules.
you don't
Oh
taste it,
yeah,
right?
when they're old enough to swallow pills, for sure, capsules. That's so easy, and it doesn't like. I'm not about. I mean, I would love for everyone to go through their pantry and just like eliminate everything processed, but like we have to be sustainable. We have to stack habits in small increments to make change. Because also a lot of these ADHD kiddos might have ADHD parents. So this helps everybody where it's like an ADHD parent is not going to be able to just clear their pantry they might, because it might be really interesting to them for a week and hyperfixate for a while. But then after that buzz runs, goes away, then they're back to, buying whatever. So anyway, that was a tangent. Also easy things you can do, like flaxseed powder, ground flax, ground chia, walnuts, so many things that you can easily add into food that tastes like almost nothing. That I'm not an advocate for sneaking foods into kids' food, because it creates trust issues and disordered eating. So like they can know it's there, but I put flax in like our shakes, and I make walnut pesto, things like that, where it's a very easy, yummy way to get omega-3s that they really need for their brain to function. And we just don't get it in our Western diet. And that's what most of these things are. Another thing is there's so much coming out in studies about the gut brain microbiome balance. And I'm so happy that it's starting to come into Western medicine too, because it's been like, kind of the brain is the brain and the stomach is the stomach. And now it's finally like Western medicine practitioners are like, okay, there's a connection, but everything has to be studied more and things like that. Yeah. A lot of these things, if we cleaned out our pantries a bit and I try to get parents to do like an 80-20 or a 70-30%, where it's like, I know your kid's going to want their Captain Crunch. Like, I know, and I don't want to cause disordered eating where we're villainizing a whole food group, because that's not healthy either. But we need to teach balance for sure. And there are some very important things that have been eliminated from our food, and we're getting calories and we're staying alive. But like, we are just incredibly lucky that our bodies are basically garbage disposals and are able to process this without killing us.
We're malnourished.
Yes, we're malnourished.
A lot of people in our culture are malnourished. You may be overweight, right? You may be well fed, but you're eating things that do not have nutritional value.
Yes. And all of these things that are missing have been studied specifically for kids with ADHD that help their symptoms and help them. I mean, it's not like I want everything to help our kid calm down, but it helps their brains function at the best they can, and they're still going to have that wonderful imagination and stuff like that, but it can help them with their impulsivity and distractibility and confidence. I mean, like a lot of people don't take into the fact that having a functioning brain is happier and you'll be more confident. Kids with ADHD are so prone to confidence issues, from being disciplined constantly to the kind of anxiety part of being a daydreamer and kind of having that squashed down all the time. And in your totally your realm of social skills, they get huge confidence hits from not being able to read the room or having been daydreaming while something socially was going on. So eating real food can have a huge impact on that. Sugar is the other thing that's the controversial. Some people are like, sugar doesn't make our kids hyper. And to me, I'm like, all right, but sugar, that's literally the purpose of glucose and sucrose in your body, like chemically, is to give your body fast, slightly out of control energy. Like that's the whole point of glucose. It is a fast acting spike in your pancreas to give you energy. So I'm like, why wouldn't it make our hyper kids hyper? That is the chemical compound. So decreasing that or being conscious of when that's consumed is a big deal too. So yeah, that's the overview, which I went way tangenty on, but a bit of an overview on nutrition there. And the other thing that you mentioned, what is general environment and setting the tone for your kid to be able to thrive. And so much of that has to do with decreasing clutter and decreasing visual stimulation. And I am a massive proponent personally in minimalist life. They have done so many studies on kids where the less toys they have, the more creative they are, and the less stuff they have out, the more they're able to focus on what they see. So a lot of what I do is coaching parents through not necessarily purging all your stuff, but doing a toy and book rotation so that there's only a few things out at a time for them to focus on. And, it kind of depends on the parent with, how much they really want to keep out. But I know in my life with my kids, I packed up like 80% of our stuff. No one has asked for it. And
Yeah.
it takes me 10 minutes maybe to tidy my whole house because of it. And it's a lot less anxious of an environment to function in. Um, and that kind of leads into helping kids with tasks. With a lot of parents' strife is nagging them constantly and them getting distracted. Like, we told you to pick up this room, and like, we told you to go do X, Y, and Z. A big one is clean your room or clean the playroom or something like that. And I told them 10 minutes ago and they still haven't done it. And understanding how the ADHD brain works as far as having to break down large tasks for them. And hopefully they will get to a point where they can break down the large tasks by themselves. But for a while, you have to kind of teach them and guide them. But when they have a lot less stuff that they're dealing with, a lot less stuff to look at, it's so much easier for them to break it down when they're looking at, let's say, a bedroom of a teenager that has a ton of clothes and a ton of schoolwork stuff. First, you can decrease the clothes, or have them all put away regularly and rotate things in and out. So there's just a lot less that they have to deal with. But there's all sorts of tactics that you can use as far as like, let's say with the clothes, like, all right, well, let's pick up everything that's green, everything. And it doesn't, it can seem very like elementary to an older kid, but it's like, all you're doing
You're
is
organizing it. You're putting structure around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just easy. And it doesn't have to be formal. It's just like, just pick something. Like, let's pick socks. Just pick socks. It'd be amazing that, like, to see how just helping them break it down. And it seems so common sense, but when your brain is looking at this room full of stuff, you're just like, where do I start? And so then when you have ADHD and you don't know where to start, and then you find something that looks kind of interesting, where are you going to go? But then you see your phone or you see your video game console. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to go there. And that leads into time blindness, where they're also, I asked them to do that 10 minutes ago and they haven't done it and we need to go. ADHD kids, there's a thing called time blindness, or ADHD people, where we were talking about earlier how for you everything is black or white, or I think maybe it was in an earlier episode that you did that I was listening to. And it's black and white for people with ADHD. Time management is now and not now. It's very hard for an ADHD brain to perceive what an amount of time feels like, especially kids. So like,
and I want to jump in. I want to talk about that because it applies to some of the things that you were mentioning earlier as well. So I have found in my own life that making everything as minimal as possible is what helps me function the best. So when we talk about nutrition, I actually, starting last October, I spend the majority of my time on a very restrictive nutrition plan because I am an all or nothing black and white person. And so when I'm allowed, because I'm an adult, I can eat what I want, I can buy what I want. I learned not to have it in my house, because if it was in my house, I was going to eat it. So I learned not to buy it, but I'm an adult. I can go to any fast food place I want to. I can go to any restaurant that I want to. So I actually started about 8 months ago on this nutrition program, where it's very restrictive. It's very it's protein and veggies basically. And for me, I love it so much. I think most neurotypical people who do it hate it because it's so restricting. But for me, my brain flips into, okay, we're on the plan now. So if I go to a party and there's cake, I don't even want it because my brain has flipped over. I can go to the grocery store and buy my protein and veggies and walk past all the candy in the checkout aisle and have no problem with it. And then I give myself about a week every month where I can eat whatever I want to. And when I first started doing that, I would go crazy, right? I mean, I would eat, but now I really don't anymore. Now I eat, I add fruits. I add things like that. If I go somewhere where there's cake or, whatever, I can have that. But usually I don't want to anymore. And if you don't know this about me, I am a triathlete. And so last April, when I did my full Ironman, I was training minimum of 20 hours a week. And in October, so what is that, like 4 months, April, May, June, July, August, 6 months later, when I started this nutrition plan, I lost 20 pounds. So I think
crazy.
Right. People think that, when you think about weight, and I was trying to lose some weight. I wasn't trying to lose 20 pounds, to be honest. I'm the smallest now I've ever been in my life. But I'm still doing races. I mean, I did 2 half Ironmans in March. So I'm still racing. I'm still doing my whole program. I've just completely changed the way that I eat. But for me, because I'm so black and white, it works so much better. I think most neurotypical people can do moderation, right? I have no sense of moderation. I truly don't. In anything, I have no sense of moderation. And so I do really well when I have 2 to 3 weeks a month where I'm in my nutrition plan, and that's it. And then I have 1 week a month where I can eat whatever, but the longer I do it, the less I want the really crappy crap. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that moderation is not the friend of those of us with ADHD. And so sometimes we really do just need things to be, I'm going to say another thing about this, that, we'll talk about addiction and things like that. When I was on dating apps, I could spend hours on a dating app. I am now completely off. They are not on my phone. My accounts have been, because I'm all or nothing. So I can be on a dating app and I can spend hours a day on it, or I can not be on it. There is no moderation for me, So I just think, just to be aware of that. I think it's, if your kiddo doesn't have ADHD, I know a lot of people in our audience have kids who are autistic and not ADHD. So this doesn't apply to everybody, but for those of us with ADHD, moderation, not super helpful. And the same when you talk about your home, right? I do not want, I do well with 2 or 3 choices of anything, whatever it is.
It's ideal
clothes,
for everybody.
Food, like where to go on vacation, whatever. Give me 2 or 3 choices. Do not give me a closet full of clothes to pick from. Do not give me the world to pick somewhere to go on vacation. I need like 2 or 3 choices. So the same with having my house. I love the way that my house feels now that I'm not a hoarder anymore. It feels so calm and peaceful, and I love it. I just want to be in my house.
I know. And people do not believe it. And I think it's so hard. Like I just read it the other day. We have like only, what was it? We only have like 30% of the world's kids, but we have like 70% of their toys or something like that. And I'm like, that's
Overstuffed or something. Is that what it was called? And maybe it was chronicling people's houses, right? And just all the stuff that you have in your house.
And I think it's so hard to get people to understand unless they do it. And that's why this program, like there's a whole module on like, I'm going to help you declutter, because if you don't do it, it seems overwhelming when your house is full of stuff. And you just don't you don't realize how freeing it is until that stuff's gone. We will always make excuses as far as like, what if I use this sometime? What if? And like when it comes to kids and their toys, like, of course we don't want to go like stealing your kids' toys from them. But like all of the broken toys that you say you're going to fix, you're not going to fix them. Just throw it away. You're not going to do it. The toys that they haven't touched in 3 months, just put it in a donation box in your garage. And if it sits there for another month, take it to Goodwill. Like that kind of stuff where it's like, just if it doesn't make you feel comfortable, and you probably have a lot more insight on this of like former hoarder life, but you don't have to feel like you're stealing things from your kids, but like you will be amazed at what they do with their brains by themselves creatively if you give them just 2 or 3 things set out. And I think even in my program, I allow for some more because it's a big change for a lot of people. But I'm hoping that it's the stepping stone of like, oh man, like they didn't even need that much. They will be creative. They might get bored, and that's fine. Boredom is good. And just say, I look forward to seeing what you decide to do. You don't have to find things for them to do. But that's good. That makes them creative, and it helps them focus on whatever they choose to be creative doing, and not just like pew, 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 like a little squirrel jumping from thing to thing.
Yeah, I actually did a 4-series blog post at Christmas time about stuff.
Yes.
Because I know that it's just something so much of what we talk
Like a
about,
love
if
language
you have
in
not
America.
experienced it, you don't so do not take your kids' stuff and donate it or throw it away, right? It needs to be a process with them. But I've been working on this for years, and sometimes I do it in big chunks. I mean, sometimes I have a car full going to Goodwill. Sometimes I do it in big chunks. Sometimes it's there's one day a month where I go through and I declutter, but sometimes it's just a box. Yeah. Right. So for me, it's a constant process. It is constantly decluttering, but sometimes it's in huge chunks, and sometimes it's just a little bit at a time. But yes, I'll link the blog series to this so that people can go to that as well. Yeah. There are all sorts of tactics and tricks you can do as far as like with kids. It's just toys are incoming constantly. Like when that's what people buy for them, right? That's because so much of the stuff that I started collecting, once people know that you collected, you're not even the one buying it anymore. Yes. Right. Yes. And grandparents like know that you don't want all this stuff. And they're like, we're going to get it anyway because we're grandparents. Yeah. And so that's fine. But when 2 things come in, 2 things go out. Yeah. Like books are a great option to give to kids, right? Activities. So something that they can do as opposed to something that they now are responsible for. Right. And a consumable activity too. Like they make some great subscriptions out there where it's like, it is a learning activity. You build a thing and you're done, or, just depending on the age. So like a physical activity you go and do, or like a craft that's done, and when it's done, you're like, oh, thank God I can leave my house now. All sorts of stuff. And like, and even with books, like books are amazing, but even then I rotate those out so that because if they look at 30 bindings that are like all like this, they're not, it's hard for them to decide. So leave out like 5 that they haven't read and put them facing forward so that they can see the cover, especially if they're young enough or they have reading difficulties, so that that picture can capture them, and they'll sit there and read the whole thing because there's only 5 of them, and they'll pick one actually. It's stuff like that. So yeah, clutter is a really, really big thing. And that's a really big part of my modules, as well as, going off of, I'll just keep using the example of cleaning a room or cleaning a big thing of strife for most parents, or nagging because we have to leave soon and you're just sitting in this pile of mess of your playroom because you've been distracted, is the importance of a daily rhythm or routine, or whatever you want to call it, for any kid, but kids with ADHD in particular, how, especially with the time blindness aspect of not being able to physically feel like I bet about 10 minutes has gone by. Having a bit of a predictability aspect to your day. It doesn't have to be strict, but it's we wake up and we get ready and we feed the dog and we put shoes on. And I am a huge advocate of visual helpers for kids too. So like and I have a PDF that can help people of getting out the door without having to nag, because it is a physical, visual, basically checklist for kids. And then it's not something you can argue about. Like instead of arguing with your kid, have this thing that doesn't change. It doesn't, it's like, well, so I think it has like, eat breakfast, brush teeth, brush hair, put clothes on.
And so if kid is arguing that, they're ready, and it's like, oh, well, this looks like you didn't do XYZ. Like, what happened there? They can't argue with that because they didn't do it.
Ready looks like
Yes.
this, right?
Yes.
Ready
And
looks like this. And
yes.
yeah, it's not you. It's the same reason I use a timer here at Starfish when game time is
Yes.
over. It's not me saying game time is over.
Yep.
It's this inanimate
Yes.
object, this,
Yes.
objective thing.
Yep. You
saying
cannot argue with an objective thing. Yep, exactly. So timers are used prolifically as well because of the time blindness thing. A visual timer, they can see tick, 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 tick. And like the ones you can get some that the whole, it's like red all the way.
I had one sitting right. Oh, I have one right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what we use.
Yeah.
Because
yes, you can see
red,
the big red window. It gets
so
smaller and smaller.
Because again, we have no concept of time. So seeing that there's 10 minutes left means nothing.
Yes.
But when you can see the passage of the red, you can visualize the passage of time, because a digital timer means nothing. I have no concept of what it means that there's 15 minutes left.
But yeah, and that's interesting, like you as an adult too, like it really carries over. And that's the thing, is that all this stuff does carry over. And making things as simple for you as possible, so you don't have to think about it, you don't have to get distracted. So one thing that I love for kids in the morning is a morning basket, and in the night before, you put in the outfit you're going to wear, or two choices of an outfit you're going to wear. You put your socks, you put your hairbrush, you put your toothbrush if you want to. And when that basket is empty, you have done all the things. So that's another way to do it, where it's like, oh, well, there's still stuff in your basket. And that way the kid doesn't have to be like, what was I just doing? What do I need to do still? It's like, look in the basket. If there is a toothbrush there, it means you have not brushed your teeth, because it would be in the sink if you had, so many tips and tricks on how to just make life easier. And that's the goal, is to make life easier. Parents don't have to nag. And another thing I will tangent off of that is, when your kids can do these things for themselves, you might have to help them learn the process. But as they do things for themselves, not only do you get to not yell and nag and scold, which will help them, everybody, just be happier, but they get such a sense of confidence, self-confidence, that they have developed themselves, because they did the thing. They did it all by themselves. And like, they get praise because they're like, oh, you did all the things. I didn't have to remind you to do anything at all. It's like, yeah, I did that. So they get that sense of pride, which, like, circling around to that, is a dopamine hit in your reward center. That increases your intrinsic motivation, which I also have a whole module on intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic, which is doing things for yourself because it's a good thing to do versus doing things for a reward. And we want to build intrinsic motivation in our kids, because life isn't always going to throw you a pizza party when you do your homework for a week, and so that is another, like, the more and more little rewards they can give themselves by just doing the right thing and being proud of themselves, the more likely they're going to continue to do it and take initiative on themselves, which makes the parents less stressed because they don't have to yell about it anymore. So it's all like an all-encompassing lifestyle thing. Yes, it's all related.
I want to add too about the routines. One concept that I think a lot of people, I don't think this is a thing for most people, but for me and people whose brains are like mine, minimizing transitions. Yes. And I'll tell you what that means. Thing too. Yeah, I'll tell you, like, in my own life. So you were talking about, Bobbi's talking about the basket, right? Where you can have things like that. Imagine your kiddo getting dressed, probably happens in their bedroom, brushing their teeth, putting on deodorant, brushing their hair, probably happens in the bathroom. Breakfast happens in the kitchen, right? So every time they're having to go to another location, their brain is resetting. They're starting over. And so if you have the basket that maybe they're carrying, with them
into the bathroom for
that reminder, because it's, so for me as an adult, once I leave my house for the day, if I go back home, I'm not leaving again. And so, like me, I go to the gym almost every day. Running errands, whatever the case may be. I make the time that I come to Starfish and my gym time, those go back to back.
Yes.
because I am not going to go to the gym, go home, and go to Starfish and go home again. I also
Yes.
live outside of the city, or I'm not
Yeah.
going to do the
Same.
opposite, right? Like when I leave, I'm going to the gym when I leave Starfish today, because I'm not
Yes.
going to go home, have dinner, and then go to, it's not happening. But
Yeah.
I think even for our kids, if they have evening activities, while this sounds counterintuitive, if you are going home after school and then an hour later going to an evening activity, it's they are having to reset every time. Instead, you could maybe go have dinner out somewhere. You could
Mhm.
go run errands,
Yes.
right? Like you could go to the library.
Yes.
Don't go home if you
Yeah.
want them to leave again,
Yes.
because home is where the day is done. We are settled. We are set. And
Mhm.
so then, and they're going to start doing something,
Yeah.
right? They're going to start reading, building with Legos, being on their
Yes.
phone. And now
Anything.
you're expecting them to stop that to go do the evening activities, sports team, Starfish,
Yes.
right? Therapy, whatever the case may be. So my suggestion, which again, it sounds a lot of people want to go home after work and then they're going to go to the gym. That's because y'all have normal brains. So
Yes.
for us,
Oh, it's even hard for normal brains.
yeah, like
Like,
once we're home, we don't want to leave again.
mhm.
So anytime that they have something extra that needs to happen, try to not go home in between, because you're probably going to experience some behavioral challenges
Yeah.
if you're expecting them to transition again.
Yeah.
And like I said, even as an adult, I intentionally structure my day that way, because I know that once I go home, like
Oh
I,
yeah. And I
know,
mean, I experience the same thing. So your sport is triathlons. My sport's equestrian sports. It's a sport called 3-day eventing. And I have in the last couple years have moved. Now I've had 2 kids in between. So I went from being extremely competitive to having 2 kids. And now I have 2 young horses that I'm trying to bring up to train. The only difference is we moved out to the country and now those horses are in my front yard. And I was like, this is going to be great. So easy. I just have to walk outside. Like there's no commute. I don't have to spend 2 hours at the barn because it's right outside my door. No, what happens is I'm like, okay, well, when the girls go to bed, which they're toddlers, so they go to bed kind of early, I still have like an hour and a half of daylight. I'll just go outside then. Well, guess what happens when I've been laying in a dark room with the sound machine on for 20 minutes with 2 kids? I come out and I'm like, ain't no way I'm going outside right
yeah,
now riding. I'm done. So I am learning. I'm kind of messing around with time blocking,
yeah,
especially with work and with kids. And because we live in the country, when I go into town, like I am running every errand I need to for the week because we're not doing this again.
yeah,
Especially if I have to bring the kids with me. And so I am in that too, where trying to minimize the transition. So like I have put on, like I'm trying to ride. It's super hot here in Kentucky and humid, which you're in Texas. So, this is like, so when I go out to feed, I'm working on, like, I put my riding clothes literally in my sink in the morning so that I will wake up before the girls wake up. And like, I cannot do anything unless I move those riding pants and put them on my body. And so I'm like, all right, I am going out to ride before it becomes 93 degrees with 80% humidity, because then I'm definitely not going out either.
yeah,
And so it is a very normal human condition. And especially with neurodivergent brains, we have to make those extra, it just has to be intentional. It's not hard. You just have to be intentional about it. I mean, that's everything that I say to myself as a parent is I just want to be an intentional parent. I don't want to fall into these problems because I hadn't thought about it before. And that doesn't mean give yourself anxiety worrying about every aspect of parenting, but just go the way you want to proceed. You want a smoother transitions. How can we make it happen? We're going to put a tub together with all of our hockey stuff or soccer stuff. It's going to live in the car, so that we can
yeah.
just go straight there. We will
Yeah,
air it
I
out
do
once a
that with
week.
my workout stuff. So because triathlon is 3 sports,
Yes.
and so I have in my I have a room that has my workout stuff, and I have a it's kind of like a shelf system, and it's got 3 shelves on it.
Yeah.
So one is my running stuff in a basket, my shoes, my headphones, my visor, my, whatever. One is my cycling stuff, my shoes, my helmet. And then one is my swimming stuff. And
Yeah.
so whatever day it is, I just have to grab that bin, and it's
Yep.
got all my
You're
stuff in
good.
it,
Yeah.
the
You don't
same
have to think
when
about
I
it.
go do strength training at the gym. I've got a basket that has my gloves, my headphones, the shoes that
Yep.
I wear to the gym. But yes, absolutely. It's having, let me see if I can explain this. It's not that things always should be put away. It's that they should be put in the place that makes the most sense. And so I don't want to put all those things away per se. I want them to go back in their basket. And so
Yes.
that's what when I, yesterday morning I got home from my ride, I took everything off and I went into my workout room, and it all went back in my bike basket.
Yes.
And so it's not a matter of, we shouldn't have shoes go here and this goes here and this
Yes.
goes here.
That's same.
If we're using them for the same thing, they should all be in the same place. And
Yeah.
then,
I have
baskets are great
sports
because you
grouped.
literally carry it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Bin,
And that's the
a
same. And you
basket,
can use that basket in the bathroom, put your clothes in, and then you put your PJs in. And then it's like,
yeah,
okay, it's the exact same thing. Everything goes back in it. And then you just repeat. And you just rinse and repeat every day. Your
yeah,
kid becomes to expect it.
yes,
And it's something they can take ownership over because it's pretty fail safe. And then they can be proud of doing that. And, just kind of hemming onto transitions as well as, yes, transitions can be really tricky. I have module on that as far as using timers, which is what we've talked about, and setting the boundary and setting a gentle boundary. You don't have to yell and stuff about it, but and this is in particular for this younger-ish kids, like you might have to physically help them move on from the thing, and there will be big feelings about it. And so I have a huge part of this program is also about handling those really big feelings and behavioral explosive outbursts and things like that from a place where you're meeting it as the calm leader of your child. You are a confident, calm leader. They can have their big feelings. There are limits on what the choices they make based off those feelings, but the feelings themselves are fine. And you let them roll like a cloud. A cloud will roll on by, and so will this emotion. But it doesn't mean we're not leaving the park. It's like, you want to stay at the park. I get it. The timer went off and we are leaving now. Would you like to hold my hand, or would you like to walk yourself? Or would you like me to carry you, or would you like to walk yourself? And there's 2 choices. It's none of them, or stay at the park, and they can scream about it. That's fine.
yeah. So
They're still leaving, and you don't have to be flustered by it.
feel.
Yeah. And
always okay to feel how you feel.
yes, yes. And, there is, when it comes to kids who get physical, as far as biting, kicking, throwing, things like that, you still stay the calm, confident leader. A lot of that, I go into emotional dysregulation and what that looks like actually in the brain from a chemical level, and what part of their brain is not firing well because it's not developed yet, the prefrontal cortex. And you get into this emotional limbic system, and so kind of how to manage that. And the broad thing about that is you can't just turn it off. You can't I think my daughter's knocking on the door. I have it locked. You can't just turn off those things. You have to let some of those feelings ride out, but you have to keep people safe. So sometimes you have to physically step in, and I am not going to let you hit. I will remove myself, or, whatever, remove this other person. Or sometimes I have to hold your hand so that you cannot hit, depending on where you're at. But you don't have to, yelling back is never the right option, because you are the model, you are the calm, confident leader that they need. They are not comfortable when they're dysregulated. They are looking to you for what do I do? Even if they're, coming about it, from hurtful words or trying to be hurtful, they're still looking for that guidance and that calm, confident leader. So that's a big thing that I focus on too, to give the parent peace that this is okay. This too shall pass. And I am going to stay confident And yes, we all yell. We're not perfect. But yeah, that's the end goal of all of this, is that we can handle those big explosive emotions that come from so many different places for these kids, especially they're just dealing with a lot and it's complex. And so meeting them with compassion rather than control is game changing. We cannot force cooperation. And we should not. I mean, it's effective in the short term to control with fear, as far as taking things away and grounding and things like that. I have a whole thing about natural consequences and punishments, because people just are blown away that you can raise productive, unentitled adults without harsh punishments and without grounding and taking away privileges, like blows their mind. But when you have mutual respect and they've learned from natural consequences, you didn't have to control them through fear, and they learn how to make good decisions on their own. So that is a huge component of the program as well. I would say the biggest is like the overarching is like I try to teach parents how to go about parenting in a way that is non-coercive and non-controlling and is respectful and effective. But then here are the tools that will drastically help your child function, so it's not so much of a fight to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Is there anything else that's in your program that we have not talked about so far?
I think we've pretty much touched on everything. Like it does encompass like the fight over schoolwork and chores and things like that, and also executive functioning as far as memory and things like that can help them in school with remembering the things that they're studying. There are some just easy little tricks as far as getting those little dopamine hits while they do something that they find boring, but it will help trip their memory, where when they see it on a test or something, they remember it better. And one of those really easy ones is the good smelling markers is one of my favorites, because kids love those. And so it's like, let's say they're doing spelling words or something, and you take that good spelling marker and they write the word in strawberry. Well, then when they go to take the test, they will remember the strawberry smell. They will remember that pleasant part, the thing that gave them the dopamine, and it will help trip their memory for how to spell that word, if that makes sense. It's,
smell is our sense that's most strongly tied to memory.
Yes.
And so even if they can take that marker with them and smell
that'd be great.
Because the smell is the most strongly tied to our memory.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. So yeah, there's a bunch of tricks like that to make homework a lot less miserable. And also, allowances for them for what, like fidgeting and like ways that deep sensory tools and things like that depending on your kiddo may really help them focus and be able to be interested in what, trying to take the fight out of homework. Let's see, also punishments and consequences. Also a whole thing on intentional movement and exercise. So I think we all know the value of free play and unstructured play from adults. But there are lots of studies, but there are some things that have actually been shown to improve cognitive function in kids with ADHD. So kids with ADHD actually have a different cerebellum. Some studies have shown it to have less like density, and others have shown it to have like literally be smaller cerebellum, which is at the base of your brain. And it's the part that helps with coordination and balance. And so they have done studies
to that.
Yeah. And so they have done studies on specific exercises like cerebellar training. That's very fun for kids. It's like, like walking on balance beams and doing wobble boards and things like that, but it's with intention that helps them gain more physical balance, helps them focus more. It's very interesting. And also sports that require focus and fine movement. One that's really been studied a lot is taekwondo and karate and gymnastics. They have also been found to be really helpful just because it makes them focus. I mean, it seems pretty simple, but like 45 minutes of that a week made a huge difference on, it's just practice. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
brain training. We practice for our sports, and sometimes you have to mentally practice things to gain the skill of focus. And with these kids, they have to practice more than most because it doesn't come as naturally to them. So yeah, so we go over that. Task overwhelm, we already talked about that. Intrinsic motivation, we kind of hit on as well. So yeah, I mean, it's basically, I tried to make it as basically holistic, all encompassing as possible without being overwhelming. I mean, everything on, I attach these actionable tasks to each module, and they're really not long or hard to do at all, because everybody wants, like, no one has time to like uproot your entire life. It's almost like mostly a mindset shift. If we can kind of shift our mindset, everything else falls into place. Decluttering is easy. Screens, that's one, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. That's a huge one module for me, is screens. And how to decrease the use, why they are literally can be addictive for kids. I mean, literally addictive. Social media and how it is literally designed to give you those hits of dopamine, to suck you in, to fast scroll. It's not just an ADHD problem. It is a societal problem at this point. It's increasing levels of depression, anxiety, attention hyperactive disorder appearing things that a lot of people are being diagnosed with ADHD, which really they just have a societal lack of focus skills because we're getting inundated. And so I've got a big old thing on that too, and how to deal with the big feelings that come with setting boundaries on that. So, yeah, so that pretty much covers most of the program. And yeah, I obviously go into detail and give you actionable tasks on what to do, how to do it. It is not hard. It just takes intention, which as parents, we should be intentional. It's, yes, our kids will ultimately grow up regardless, but like, most of us had our kids with the purpose of, having a vision for what we want our lives to look like. So yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Bobbi, thank you so much for being here and sharing all that. That sounds, as someone with ADHD, that sounds so amazing. And I think my trajectory, it probably would have taken me a lot less time to get to where I finally am now in my life, if things like that had been in place for me when I was younger. So
Yeah,
thank you for
parents
sharing
just
all
don't
that.
know.
Yeah, no, I even with the nutrition thing, it's become a really big thing for me, but I recognize that we all feed our kids the way that we were fed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my whole thing with nutrition is we do what we know, right?
Yes.
We do what we think is best. And then if you learn something new, you can do something new. But
Yes.
I think that's such a huge thing, especially with like food. Is that we basically tend to eat the way that we were raised to eat. And so
we're 2 generations into this processed food, just lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Tell the people where they can find you.
Okay. So the program itself is called Adore the Journey. And I do have a community Facebook group. If you type in ADHD ORE, like Adore the Journey, you should find the community Facebook group there that is open to everyone. If you decide to move forward with the program, you can either you can DM me. I can give you my email too that you can link, in your bio. But the program, you would also get into a private Facebook group, which would give you access to live coaching calls that I do weekly, and a community of people also doing the program. So that is part of the perks of the program as well, is that you get that accountability and community there where it's just you guys. Otherwise, I am on Instagram as well, and I can send you that link. I just recently changed the name on it to make it a little more like with my title. So it's just Bobbi Westbrook.np for nurse practitioner.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook too. So I'll send you a couple of the links and stuff
Okay.
so that you can copy it if you want to. And yeah, I think the community Facebook group, email and DM is definitely a way to get a hold of me. I can send more information that way.
Okay.
So yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. This was really
thank
amazing.
you.
So thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
All right, guys, we'll see you again next week.